Welcome to our next lesson in The Girls Still Got It. We're studying the book of Ruth. It's exciting. This week, Ruth is going down to the threshing floor to meet Boaz. Keep in mind that the title of the book that we're using, which of course is by Liz Curtis Higgs, as we mentioned, but The Girls Still Got It. And what is it? I teach English. Yeah, you have to know what the pronouns are referring to, but it means value, significance, vibrancy, worth. Ruth still has all of those things after all she has been through. So does Naomi. So do you and I. So that's where we are. Our noble Ruth is about to discover what stands in the way of her marriage to Boaz. It's going to be probably just a moment of hesitation. We're from the future. We know how the story ends, but she does not. Just as we don't know how our story is going to end and what all will be involved. So we can kind of feel her angst maybe a little bit at this. But we're going to pick up today reading in chapter 3 at verse 12, where we left off last week. And it says this. Remember, right before this particular point in the story, her mother-in-law, Naomi, had told her what she needed to do. Wash thyself, anoint thyself. She knows the ways of men. Yeah, smell good, look good, all of the things. And keep in mind, he's not seen her the way he's going to see her here. He's been seeing her in the field. And so anyway, so many exciting thoughts right here. But we're starting at verse 12 of Ruth chapter 3. And Boaz says this to her. And now it is true that I am thy near kinsman. Howbeit, there is a kinsman nearer than I. Can't you just see her just holding her breath for just a minute? Like he said, it's true, I'm thy near kinsman. However, yeah, there's somebody closer to you than I am, closer kin than I am. Sometimes the word kinsman kind of throws us off because it's not familiar terminology to us in our day. But it's just closer kin. If we take the zman off, then a closer kin. Yeah, somebody closer. But poor Ruth, her shoulders probably just sagged for just a moment. Upon hearing that, there was a nearer relative. And it's possible he would be the one who would want to marry her and redeem her family's property and all of those things that went along with that. The other man would. But we kind of sense already Ruth has eyes for Boaz and Boaz has eyes for her. But keep in mind, at this point, Ruth has already laid herself down at Boaz's feet, which we said last week, it was the equivalent of her asking him to marry her. Yeah, where would that leave you if you asked some man to marry you? And he said, well, I mean, I'd love to do that. However, there might be somebody that would rather do, that wants to do it too, and he's more likely candidate for that. We would despair, probably. She would, if Ruth had known that, would she have put this whole night in motion? We don't know. Would she have put herself in this position? Possibly not. Unless Naomi could already see God's divine providence, because we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to those who are the called according to his purpose. So God has a plan, and all of those things work together. Anytime I think about that verse in Romans 8, verse 28, about all things working together for good, I always think there may be single incidents that have led us along the way to get us to where God wants us to be, but individually they don't seem wonderful. But when you put them all together, I heard someone say one time, long time ago, it would be the same thing as making a cake. And all of the ingredients that would go into the cake, the flour, the eggs, all of the things, if you just took a big bite out of each ingredient, you'd be like, ugh, this isn't so good. But if you put them all together, you get a sweet tasting cake. And so I always think about that analogy when I think about Romans 8:28, about all things working together for good to them that love God. And I will say this, once again, Boaz seemingly is willing to throw away his own happiness. We know that he is interested in her. He was from the very first moment that he saw her in his field. We could tell that. But he's willing to risk his own happiness for God's will and for her happiness. True love risks everything for the sake of the beloved. I love that quote. I've thought of it so often. True love risks everything for the sake of the beloved, willing to give it up for the good of somebody else. When Dave passed away, our Dr. David Gibbs was speaking on a speaker call to our family, and he says, this is the thing. It may not seem like the best thing for you all at this moment, but it's definitely the best thing for him. and for him to be better off, and for it to be what was best for him. It helped me turn loose a little bit to know it was for his good. So I kind of sense what's happening here. Boaz is willing to say, okay, if that's what's better for Ruth, I'm going to go with that. And so after he, drops this bombshell on Ruth, he's going to lay out a plan of how we can take care of the situation, he says. So in verse 13, he says, tarry this night. That's the first thing to do, Ruth. Just let's stop right here. Let's get through this night. How many times have we all been there? One Jewish writer wrote this of this moment. He said, it was as if Boaz were saying to her, may you be mine by virtue of this night. So he's not sending her away. Well, that's good news. Neither is he claiming her, as he could, and as many men on threshing floors that night probably did claim some woman for theirs. He's just going to protect her and guard her. He's going to guard both their reputations, not allowing her to be seen or heard on the threshing floor. It's for her good. It's for his good as well. I was reminded just of their situation, and keep in mind that that Ruth is not from here. She may not know what the customs are. She may not know what the dangers are even. But she's at a man's threshing floor in the middle of the night. But I know, going through teenage years, you know how that is, and temptations and all the things that your parents say, be careful of this, be careful of that. But, it seems like back in my day, it was kind of a saying that went around, and maybe it still does. I don't know. I've probably gotten too old to have heard it lately. If you love me, you will do this. But I always thought, if we just flip it, if you love me, you wouldn't ask me to do this. So whenever it's true love, you see one looking out for the other's best interest. But Boaz handling this whole situation this way is what makes him such a hero. He thinks beyond this moment. He's willing to wait for what is good and what could be his. And he also must attend to Ruth's concerns. Who is this other kinsman? Do you think Ruth is thinking, is he young or old or rich or poor or smart or not so smart or kind or cruel? Like, what could it be? At least those would be our concerns, especially if we were in another country and didn't know what to expect from anything. But probably what troubles Ruth the most is the other kinsman is not Boaz. And she probably has her heart set on Boaz. But the worst thing about this other kinsman, he's a stranger. She doesn't know him, but he has the right to claim her. So she doesn't know how this is all going to play out. But continuing in verse 13, and it shall be in the morning, Boaz says, that if he will perform unto thee the part of a kinsman, well, let him do the kinsman's part. He goes on to say, but if he will not do the part of a kinsman to thee, then will I do the part of a kinsman to thee, as the Lord liveth. Might Boaz have a little bit of a smile, a gleam in his eye? Maybe he knows something about this other kinsman. No doubt he does. He knows there is another kinsman, and he might suspect that maybe this other kinsman is not going to be able or willing to take on Ruth. We'll get to that part at some point a little bit further down in the lessons. But whenever Boaz says to her, if he will not claim his right to you, then I will do the part of the kinsman redeemer. No doubt she had a smile on her face then, because maybe she suspects it's going to work out for her good. And Boaz always brings the Lord into it. As the Lord liveth, he's promising upon the truth of God that he will take care of Ruth. And I think she senses that he's just that honorable. But don't miss this. As surely as the Lord was involved in every step of the lives of these biblical characters, as all of them, he's involved in ours. Sometimes we miss that. We know the end to this story and how it all works out and how God just directed their steps to each other. He's going to give them each other. We know that. Back in my younger days, I don't even know who sang the song, but there was a song. The words were, every step you take, every move you make, I'll be watching you. Yeah. Well, we know the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. That means the woman too, just mankind. Our steps are ordered by the Lord. And every step we take, he's watching us. You know, those 10,000 steps we're supposed to be getting in every day? Every step, God is watching us. Maybe it might make those 10,000 steps a little bit easier, don't you think? But verse 13 ends this way, lie down until the morning. He's asking her to rest physically and spiritually, knowing that God will take care of things. There's nothing inappropriate going on here. He can't leave his grain unguarded to escort her home. Neither can he turn her loose and send her home in the middle of the night. He's probably a little bit astonished that she traveled in the night, because this is the thing. She probably arrived there maybe about 6 o'clock in the evening, and she's supposed to wait until midnight to uncover his feet and lie down beside him, next to him. But he's going to have to keep her near until dawn. And so he tells her to lie down until the morning. After their whispered exchange, a hush falls over Bethlehem's threshing floor. This is significant because even after God has orchestrated a plan, sometimes we have to, don't miss it, be still and wait it out. Waiting is so hard. And so as she lies down there at his feet till the morning, do you suppose she goes to sleep right away? I don't know. We're all so different. Do you fall asleep before your head ever hits the pillow? Or you just lie awake at night and count sheep or whatever it is that people do that can't sleep, and wonder, what is happening? What can I expect in the morning? Would she have been, I don't know, would she have been exhausted from just the adrenaline dump, as they call it, of the excitement of getting ready and going to the threshing floor and talking to him up close? And he's seeing her in a light he's never seen her before. She's seeing him in a light she's never seen him before. Unlike the daughters of Lot, Ruth lay at a man's feet all night without breaking the law. One writer calls Ruth the anti-Moabite. So chaste was her behavior compared to her ancestors. And then that was from verse 14, and she lay at his feet until the morning. But then it goes on, and she rose up before one could know another. No doubt she was reluctant to leave Boaz, but she's ready to leave the threshing floor, probably. And that day, only those up to no good roamed around at night, all night at that. I will say not much good happens after midnight. I pick up a lady to bring her to work. Sometimes she just needs a ride to work. She's another of the teachers, and a little bit of car trouble. Anyway, and she's talking about, she lives in downtown Birmingham, and she says, I tell you what, and after midnight, yeah, all kinds of things happen down here in downtown Birmingham. My dad used to say to me, I always had a curfew. Up until I got married, I had a curfew. It did get a little later. I think at first it probably started out at 10 o'clock when I was 16, then bumped to 11 o'clock. But even the night before I got married, I still had to be home by midnight, because my dad always said, nothing good happens after midnight. Like, you're pretty limited on what you can get into, and what you get into is not good after midnight usually. So this is where Ruth finds herself at midnight on the threshing floor. But the next morning, when the sun begins to come up, and it's just very, very early morning, this is what has to happen. Boaz has to safely send her back home. And he's got plans for how he's going to do that. Now, we would expect something, maybe romantic to come from him. I don't know. Was Boaz romantic? We're going to find out when we get to heaven. Maybe something from like the Song of Solomon, like Rise Up My Love kind of thing. But drawing attention to Ruth is the last thing he wants. Keep in mind, they're having to guard their reputations. And so in verse 14, he says, let it not be known that a woman came into the floor. How about good morning, Ruth? Don't let anybody know you've been here, is what he says. He doesn't even mention her name. They're referred to as man and woman through this particular part of this story. They don't dare even breathe each other's name for fear of being overheard. And this is the thing. A low male voice probably wouldn't be anything that would catch anybody's attention, but a higher feminine voice definitely would draw attention to them. So Boaz knew that he must not only keep a good conscience, but also keep a good name for both of them. It's always good for God's people to avoid both sin and scandal. We're reminded that the Bible says to abstain even from the very appearance of evil. And it isn't primarily the town gossips that concern them. The real danger is if a man were suspected of being intimate with a Gentile, he wasn't allowed to marry her. So he cannot risk somebody knowing that Ruth has been there. She is a Gentile. He is not. He's Jewish. And he wouldn't have been able to marry her, which he has his hopes of doing, if anybody found out that, and they could have made it up, just like people do in our day, even if he had not been. If the word got out that he had been, Could he have defended that? We don't know. But if he were accused of that, he would not be entitled to marry her. He would not be allowed to marry her, and he wasn't willing to risk, their future together over a technicality like that. So what is best for her is at the forefront, even though he's interested too. He wants to look out for her too while he's looking out for himself. So the sooner he sends her on her way, the better off everything's going to be, and just see how it plays out. But true to his nature, he can't send her home empty-handed. So in verse 15, he says this, also he said, bring the veil that thou hast upon thee and hold it. And when she held it, he measured 6 measures of barley and laid it on her, and she went into the city. Lovely symmetry there. At midnight, Ruth had asked him to spread his garment for her. Now at the break of day, he asked Ruth to spread her veil for him. The best part is now that the sky is starting to turn gray, Ruth and Boaz can gaze into each other's eyes for the first time. And up close, she's been lying at his feet. There is a video that I've been showing in-house whenever, I'm teaching this each week, and just showing little snippets of it. And I think you could probably find it on YouTube under the one who posted this video however long ago of the story of Ruth and Boaz. She goes by God Chaser WI. And I think you could find it there, but it's about a 20-minute long video that covers the whole story of Ruth here. And it's good. I love it's succinct, but you see them in their dress of the day, what the threshing floor would have looked like, what it looked like for her to hide and wait for him, and then to come out and uncover his feet and lie at his feet. It's just one of my favorites of that, if you'd like to look it up. And again, that's God Chaser WI, I think is how you can find it under her YouTube name. The actual HTTP URL, whatever they call those things, is about this long. So anyway, I thought you might not have a pen or pencil to mark it down. But if you will message me, I will post that for you so that you can find it if you're looking for it. But as they look into each other's eyes, it's the first time they've been up this close and personal. It's been through the night, early morning. Like, can you sense all of the sensations going through their hearts and minds over this? But probably in each other, they see certain things, depth that they had not been able to see before, even though they knew it was there. They see there's a mutual respect, I think they see in each other's eyes, probably a fond affection, and maybe more than anything, a faith that can't be shaken. It's new to her. It's not new to him. He's known God a long time. She has not known him so long, but once she knew God, came to know God, just committed to him, thy God shall be my God, she told Naomi. She's been all in ever since then. So he measured 6 measures of barley, not 7. Keep in mind that 7 is the number of completion, but this story is not completed. And so he doesn't give her that 7th measure, which is probably good, because we know that 6 measures of barley that he's going to put into her veil, her cloak, we know that it weighs a lot. She's been toting around heavy things ever since she arrived in Bethlehem, Judah. Remember, working in the field, it would be like carrying a 50-pound bag of dog food home for our equivalent on how we understand the weight of these kind of things. Now he's going to give her grain to take back to Naomi again. So he measures 6 measures of barley. How does she even carry that? I've been to Israel a couple times. They carry things on their head. But this is like shifty, throwing it over your shoulder or whatever it would be. And so he's going to send her back to her mother-in-law. The simplest definition of faith, the title of this lesson, and I don't think I gave it to you, is in verses 12 through 18, is Sitting Tight for Mr. Right. Sitting tight for Mr. Right. And so the simplest definition of faith is sitting tight. Isn't that truth? Has anybody ever told you, or have you ever told anybody, just sit tight? What does that mean? Something's about to happen. Just wait for it. Just sit down for just a minute and wait, because it's coming. It'll happen soon. And so that's where we leave Ruth and Boaz at this moment. He's going to stay right where he is. He isn't going to walk her home. Can't risk doing that. And before all of the other men on the threshing floor are up and about their business, he needs to get her out of there. And so that's how this lesson ends, with her carrying grain back home to Naomi. And Naomi is going to be so interested in what's happened. As a matter of fact, whenever Ruth gets back to Naomi, Naomi wants to know all about it. And she obviously has the grain, and I'm sure they were both excited about that, and maybe Naomi even more than Ruth, because Ruth is definitely excited about the man. But all Ruth can talk about, I would think, is Boaz, 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 the man. The man said unto me. She also says at the end of that chapter, take this home to your mother-in-law. But if you look back in that chapter, maybe he did say that, but God didn't record that he said that. But maybe Ruth is wanting Boaz to look good in Naomi's eyes too, I think. Anyway, so many good thoughts and lessons. Aren't we glad God put this particular story in the Bible for us? And we too have a kinsman redeemer. If you're listening and you don't know the Redeemer that we know, he's worth knowing. I'd encourage you to look for him, find him, sit at his feet a while. It's a good place to be. And if you'll let me know, I'd be glad to help you with that. I hope you enjoy your day, your weekend. Oh, next week, we're going to skip 1 week, and I'll see you in 2 weeks from now. This coming week is spring break, so I don't teach in-house when school is out. And then I try to keep in-house and online kind of in the same sequence together. So anyway, I probably won't record something next week. I might record something else, maybe, and then just wait until the week that I'm teaching it in-house to teach the next lesson coming up for the book of Ruth. But anyway, enjoy your weekend, enjoy your week, and I'll see you soon.